Yeah. Last year was a super election year with around 2 billion people eligible to vote around the world, and there were lots of warnings. Not only the World Economic Forum that declared that disinformation aided by AI would drown democracy in a sea of lies. It was also the European Union, lots of governments, and traditional media sort of saying that this is really a potential collapse of global democracy. What happened was that there's no evidence that a single election was significantly impacted by AI. There was not an election that was swung by the use of deepfakes. There was certainly use of deepfakes, but in many instances it was actually something that connected voters. So for instance, in India there's a lot of languages spoken, so candidates would create AIs of one candidate speaking a language that was more widely spoken in another region of the country. And of course there were AI deepfakes that was humorous or had a malicious purpose, but it seems that human beings are less gullible than some of the most alarmist narratives often assume. And this is of course not particularly surprising, because the warning about AI deepfake disinformation mirrors something that we saw, for instance, prior to the European elections in 2019. Then it was social media and disinformation that was an existential threat to the ecosystem of open democracy. But again, when there was a post-mortem of those elections, there was no evidence that disinformation had significantly impacted it. It's the same with the story after the 2016 US elections, that Russian disinformation essentially decided the US election. That was run with for a while, but when you ask a number of social scientists who have actually looked at it, that's a story that has collapsed. And again, it's not that there wasn't Russian disinformation. There was a Russian disinformation campaign, but it's just that most people, when you scroll down social media, if you see a deep fake or a story, that doesn't automatically change your mind. In fact, most mis and disinformation, and then we can have discussions about how you define that, is shared by hyper-partisans and sort of is more likely to preach to the choir than sort of mass convert people into delusions. That unfortunately is not a lesson that I think is being absorbed by the powers that be. To a large extent, we see a wish to adopt more and more restrictive regulation, not only on disinformation, but also when it comes to deep fakes. In fact, since 2016, we've seen more than 100 laws around the world prohibiting various forms of false information, and right now AI disinformation is probably at the top of the list of that. And I think that is likely to be a far more significant threat to open democracies than deepfakes. I don't want to completely downplay the potential threats of deepfakes, but I think human beings have more agency than we're being told, and that if you see a video of Keir Starmer being ejected from Parliament or Donald Trump being shot, you have a lot of other sources of information to check that against, and that is probably going to be what most people will do, rather than just rely on one however credibly looking video that goes viral in a particular ecosystem of information. So let's be wary, but let's not panic, and let's not undermine free speech.
Thank you, Jacob.